quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. It's where we all begin. Welcome to Lazy Dog Typewriters.
The 1960s was a decade filled with upheaval and strife in political, social, and cultural arenas, and the clash of the titans in the typewriter world. Industry giants like Adler, Royal, Smith Corona, and Olympia faced off against a new, nimble rival from Japan. Oh, brother. Let's learn more about the Brother Signature 510 typewriter, a machine made to knock those Olympians off Mount Olympus. Even 50 years later, it types like a thunderbolt out of the Brother Blue.
Howdy folks, and welcome to Lazy Dog Typewriters, where before you have a Signature 510 made by Brother for Montgomery wards. I think this might just be the best Brother manual typewriter they ever made. And I think it really is, as Kevin mentioned in the intro, an Olympia killer. The SM9 is one of the best that Olympia made in this similar time frame and just is revered by collectors. But it has a little more of a bland styling, and I think the Signature 510 and its baby blue coloration and white keys and its awesome radio buttons on the side, I think that is a little bit better looking, a little bit better machine. So let's learn about it and see what you guys think as we go on. So it's a JP3 variant, which means it's just the third mechanical typewriter, manual typewriter that Brother had made. This one was made in 1965, and I believe that's when they first came out, 64, 65. It's a full-featured typewriter that's really kind of aimed at the office user, but in a home setting, if that makes any sense. It's good enough for the office, but it's really a portable machine. So that's where it tried to fit. So let's take a quick look overview of the features. And one of the obvious ones we started out with was these radio buttons. So a little bit of explanation is probably necessary even there. What is a radio button? What does that mean, radio button? Well, in this case, a radio button is just a nickname for these push buttons. But back in the days of analog radios, when you would tune a radio, so let's tune our radio here, just turn the knob. When you got it to a station you'd want, you would either push and hold or sometimes pull out on the buttons. They had about 5 buttons on your radio faceplate, and that would set your preset. So you didn't have to manually tune those 5 stations. And the good news was there probably was barely 5 stations worth listening to at the time. And that's why we call these radio buttons. All right, so moving on from the radio buttons, we'll look at some of the other features. We have a set and clear here for our tabs. We have our heavy, medium, and light pressure, or tension, I should say, which is gives you a sense of how stiff the keys are. And that actually on this Brother really does make a difference. We'll talk about the typing touch in a minute. Continuing on with our full feature set, we have obviously your platen knobs, but what is this? A 0, a 1, and second line, and a 12. What in the heck could that be? Well, that is, what is that, Kevin? A paper injector. You're absolutely right. So what you do is you would thread your paper in. Well, we've already kind of cheated, but imagine let's just do it. We'll take our paper, we'll get it started, and then Kevin here will do the honors and inject that paper, Kevin. Just pull it right on down. You got it? It's tough. Yeah, look at that. It presets it right to where you could want it to be. It advances by 12 lines. Now you could do 12 lines, 12 lines, 12 lines, and our paper has a little bit of a kink from having sat in there overnight. But what a nifty little feature. You only normally saw this paper injector feature on models like the Olympia SG1, so the big Olympia, and you didn't find it on the SM1. All right, so that's just a real nifty feature that kind of makes it look like an office machine or an office intended machine. We'll take our paper out. Continuing on the normal, you have your tab. I always mistake that. You have your margins, which are push and slide, but they're much larger than your normal Brother ones. The JP ones are little dinky chiclets compared to this, so they're very easy to move. Really pretty white with a ruler. You have a paper guide on the left, and you have your tension lever here. So that releases the tension on your paper so you can make adjustments. You have a paper tray. You don't have a paper bail, but you do have really nice card guides. And one of the nifty features is this is really rare. I know it's probably down in the weeds for a lot of you, but having card guides that you can individually manipulate and have them bend forward is just oh so convenient, especially when they have liquid paper on them and you need to clean them out, or if you're doing postcards, which is what those are for, to hold some type of material flat against the platen so you could type on it. All right, continuing on around past the back, you'll notice that you have your line selector here, but it's 0 is up here, and then 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, and 3. So, gosh, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 individual settings. So, just a ton of options. I don't know when you really need triple space or 2.5 for that matter, but somebody must have needed it. You have, of course, 2 carriage release levers, very nice solid levers. You have a push button, which will make the platen go into freewheeling mode, and you have another lever, if that wasn't enough, that puts it into freewheeling mode anyway. Interestingly enough, if you put it in the 0, that is 0 advance. So you haven't broken the carriage return, you've just sort of turned it off. I'm not sure what that functionality would be for, but it's available to you. You can put it down in the 1, 2, and 3, and of course it works. And if you put this lever, which puts it into permanent freewheeling, in the 0, it doesn't do anything for you. But in the 1, the 2, and the 3, it certainly does. Yes, Kevin?
I just wanted to say that maybe locking this thing was probably for when airplanes were invented and you put your typewriter in your suitcase and you didn't want the platen rolling around.
Well, that's an interesting theory. Unfortunately, airplanes were invented about 60 years before this was, so we'll have to try to agree to disagree on that. All right, so what's this thing here? We've got a really pretty carriage return arm. And then this weird thing, well, this is a sign that somebody loved this typewriter because it is just the plastic or rubber protective handle that keeps your handle from banging into your ribbon cover when you stow it away. You'll notice this goes down just a hair for stowage. It's just a sign that somebody kind of cared about it. And this machine really is in good shape. Just 1 or 2 little scratches. And you can see that it was used because somebody had rested their hands here and has worn it off. And maybe they were left-handed, I don't know, but it's kind of an archaeological dig sometimes. All right, so back to the buttons. We've covered a little bit already. If you put it in white stencil, it pops everything out, and you get no rise on your ribbon vibrator. And then, of course, black is your upper portion, and red is your lower portion. We'll abstain from putting ink on our roller we've already cleaned and go from there. Let's take the ribbon cover off. This is a very substantial signature. And we, as always, replace these little rubber paddings, bushings, because they're always rock hard, and it makes a difference when you have a nice rubber soft padding. You've got nice big posts that will secure the ribbon cover into the machine, and we of course have also replaced the grommets over here with some nice fresh rubber. Yes, Kevin? Yeah, he's pointing those out to you. So that's, I don't know, there's a whole lot of buzz about what makes servicing a machine and what makes a reconditioned machine and what makes a refurbished machine. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds and too much argumentation, but I always like to over-deliver and under-promise. So we just say we serviced our machines, but they probably could easily be described as reconditioned. I don't think you can call a machine restored until you've replaced the platen, and we have not done that. And that brings us back to Brothers Platens, which is the fact that they are almost always soft. And this one's just a tiny bit hard, but it's still very soft compared to any Silver Seiko or Smith Corona platens that we have encountered out here in the wild. Just a quick look at our machine. Very clean, kind of a standard setup. You have a carriage lock over here on the right side. It's a little different than the ones for the smaller brothers in that it pulls forward and it's not in the back corner. So just a small difference. Very effective, and that's how you change your thing. You also have a very nice bell. I just find very few things to dislike about this machine. So one of the things that we might talk about is that this machine does have a somewhat heavy touch. And I'll just whip in some paper here, see if we can catch that paper injector, put it into ratcheting mode. I think the idea was you'd put it, I don't know, right at the tip, let's say, and then you do your 12 spaces. Wham! Well, that's not it. Maybe you would just put the paper right in. Anyway, so it would be consistently at the same spot. And let's put the ribbon cover back on so we can get a good shot. So let's go ahead and zoom into our typing test And Kevin, can you come manipulate the camera here and give him a close up of what we're typing on?
Sure.
All right, well, there we go. All right, so let's go our sample. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Okay, so one of the things you may notice, get out of 0, put it into 1, hard for you to tell maybe on camera, zoom out Kevin, is this machine has a very sturdy touch. I'm envisioning selling one of these machines to a guy who's a really heavy typist. I think elephants might type a little lighter than he does. So I specifically sought this machine out because it does have a firmer, heavier touch, and I kind of like that. If you're super fast, you might not like that. If you're a real light toucher typist, you might not like that. But I've also noticed, because I have about 5 or 6 of these, is that touch does vary somewhat between models, between instances of the 510. Okay, as we were saying about this typewriter, it has a firm touch normally. And that's one of the only cons that we would say is some people think this touch is just too stiff for them. They don't like it. But this spring right here, working in conjunction with your touch selector, high, medium, and low, regulates that touch. And we have learned from James Ray in his video that if you simply disconnect this spring and then simultaneously give it just a little bit more of a heavier touch with this spring, that you have full functionality on the machine but a much lighter touch. So while I haven't employed that method yet, because again I want this one to have a heavier touch, I like the heavier touch, I think it's a neat option that you can do. Now another little bit of an error, flawed design problem this guy has, and it's minor, is right now I'll let you hear the space bar. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that because we've already fixed it. But there is just a tiny bit of a clanky noise sometimes in this space bar, and we troubleshot and isolated that. And we'll roll in some video here to let you take a look at it. But in a nutshell, there is a post on the side of this machine. You can't see it now, but well, maybe we can. Okay, yeah, we can, Kevin. Let's zoom in. So without doing too much of an overview of what we've already shown you, there is a post right here that hits the frame of the typewriter back in there when you're space barring. It's up here, actually. I'm pointing to the wrong place. It's up here. Let's zoom over here, bud. Okay, can we get it in there? I don't. No, you can't quite see it. So you have to take off these panels, which we're not going to do live. In any case, we put a piece of vinyl tubing on it, just like this, and it deadened the noise. And will probably last for a good 20 to 50 years, just like it is. So it's a small, simple, quick trick you can do to fix one of the only flaws that I find in this machine. Let's go ahead, and we've already done a typing sample. Let's just talk about the pros and cons. So the pros, it's a prosumer machine. I think it's like the hybrid cameras that they have designed for almost professional quality, but at more of a consumer price. I think that's what they were trying to do with this machine in 1965. It's heavier for sure than any of the JP1s. It's a little too heavy to lug around. So when you put it somewhere, you're going to park it. It has all the features you could ever imagine, except, and this would be a con, for some reason, it does not have a paper support. And I just kind of flummoxed by that, because you would think with everything else, I know, a paper injector, 6 different places to put your line selector. I guess they just figured you don't need a paper selector, so they didn't give you one. It's quite odd. Here we go.
Yeah.
It does have a clean back, and it has this awesome spy eye on it, which I didn't want to remove. But in any case, as a typing machine, this is an excellent, excellent, excellent machine. The only flaw, again, is sometimes you can't tune in all the radio stations you want. Kidding, of course. It's not a Royal Sprite. But I guess they could have done that, too. That would have been really sweet if it actually plugged in the radio to it, and the radio buttons had worked. And maybe you tune it with your platinum knobs. But in any case, back to the topic at hand. Excellent typer, solid, heavy, all metal construction. Only downside, the typing touch is a little stiff out of the box. You can adjust it with your tension selector. You can adjust it by just detaching that spring, and then it suddenly becomes a light touch machine while still functioning. So that's pretty amazing. I think that this could rival the Olympia SM9. I don't know that this one was so successful in the marketplace. I think Brother was known for small, lightweight, and inexpensive machines, and I think this was their foray into a more expensive machine, and I don't know that they did that well with it because people didn't know where to put them in their brand imagination. So, having said that, if you ever have the opportunity to get one of these 510s or a 513, which is their other model, and lastly, there's a 510 that's a D model, and what's nifty about the 510D is, if you ever have one of those, is you see the segment here, if you can zoom into there, Kevin. There you go, bud. And you see the segment slots. The 510D has a change of type character set. So you can, just like on the Smith Coronas, you could pop off one of your type slugs and put a customized slug on there. And it's really neat because that slug actually rotates on 4 different faces. So one type slug can have 4 different things on it. And because it was a bigger slug with that rotating head, you needed to have a bigger gap. So it's interesting to see you have all this uniform type slug slots, segment slots, and then boom, you've got like a twice as big of a gap in that last slug. David Torres has one of these, I know, because I sold it to him, and they're pretty nifty. But we have never found one of those type slugs you can actually rotate around in the wild. I would love to find one. If you've got one, let me know. Kevin's got something he wants to share with us.
Well, at the end of this video, sorry again, I really want to actually give you a little bit more view of our garage because we're getting kind of close, but we're not going to do an actual tour.
Close to what, Kevin?
100 subscriber special!
All right, well, I can't think of any better way to end without that interruption, and let's go ahead and do it. Give them their quick pan of our garage. Hey, Kevin, what do those radio buttons do on the Signature 510?
They turn on the radio.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Do we only have one station?
No.
Wow, that's awesome. What if you get tired of listening to the radio when you're typing? Well, holy cow, that's really great. No wonder this machine is so awesome. Thanks, Kevin.
Please like, subscribe, and share. Have a nice day, Lazy Typewriter fans.